Hi, it's Kylie Coo. Welcome to my studio. So last week the prompt for the Mixed Media Emporium was to make a masterboard. I made two. So the one I made with deli paper and tissue paper I'm putting aside, but I'm going to use this one. It was a cereal bar box that I had covered with various collage papers, and what I'm going to do today is to make two mini junk journals from it. And what you see there is just a variety of papers that I'll pull from to make the signature for each of the journals. I'll use some glue. I'm going to bind one in a kind of traditional way and one in a slightly less traditional way, but I'll talk you through each of those. What I'm going to do to begin with is to remove that central piece from the box to make two. Now, I had thought at one point that I might make this into one journal itself. That cover would have been fine, but then I thought the thing about Masterboard is it's something that can be cut up and be used for more than one project. It doesn't have to be, but I wanted to show how it could be used to make two different items. So I'm making mini junk journals, just using my rotary cutter to take that central piece out. So these will then form the cover. Now, if you are in the Mixed Media Emporium Facebook group with myself and my co-host Nina Ribena, then please do feel free to make something like this from your masterboards. And if you do this project, then feel free to share it in the group and just mark it something like Kylie's Journals, just so long as you let us know what the project is and where you've drawn your idea from. And of course, Nina is also working on something this week, so I will leave a link to her video above and below. So what I want to do now is to actually cover the inside of that page. I hadn't done it last week, knowing that when it came to it I probably would at some point. So I'm just taking some old book pages and some smaller pieces from a music sheet, and I'm just going to use my matte medium and get these stuck down. So got all this on speed because it was a kind of not a slow process. I worked fairly quickly. It wasn't a long project to do, but as I've said before, watching gluing is a bit like watching paint dry, but it lets you see where I've taken the process to anyway. So getting a good layer down, sometimes cardboard can absorb quite a bit of glue, so I make sure that I get plenty down. And as I say, just adding those little bits of music for variety. And this, of course, will be the inside of the cover. So I had a little bit of an overhang there, which I will cut off. Just going to measure this for you so you can get a rough idea of the size, and obviously I also need to know for my pages. So that's about 19 centimetres across. So I'm going to make my page, when it's fully opened, about 18.5 centimetres. And it's about 7.5 inches, so I'll make the pages about 7.25 inches over. In terms of height, we are looking at just under the 14, so I'm going to make these about 13 centimetres high, which is, I'm going to make it about 5.25. That's how it would roughly work out. So I'm not going to be precise with all my pages, but I know that that's kind of the maximum size that I would want. So I'm going to start now to build my signatures. I'd put the two covers to the side. I gave them a bit of a dry with my heat tool and then placed them to the side to dry a bit more. So just looking at the rough size of these, realising that if I take that white bit off the bottom, I can just fold these book pages in half and they will fit quite nicely. Not looking to have all the pages the same size, and in fact I think having pages of different sizes in junk journals gives a nice kind of random feel to it. I think it's nice when you're going through them and coming across different sizes of pages. Now I also had these sheets of deli paper and I'm just going to tear these down to size. A bit more difficult to see there, so I skipped ahead a little bit. piece of craft paper, obviously just a small piece left over from another project. I simply tear it in two and do one in each. This was the outside cover of some music sheet music, and I'd obviously used the music pages from inside, but no reason why I can't use that cover as well. And again, just tearing them roughly, not looking to have neat edges or anything on them. And then using some pattern paper, again, some scraps. This one was going to be a bit too big, so I was just folding a little bit to the inside. So that will give a kind of flap to open up when I'm actually going through and using the journal. And the same with that piece. Again, that just adds interest when going through the journal. And I didn't mind that that page didn't have a straight edge on it. So now just looking to assemble my signature. There's 11 pages in it, 11 pages that I then double up. So I have my two signatures, and what I'm going to do now, these are mainly dry. I may need to stick a little bit down on some of the edges, but I'm just going to trim the overhang off. Just straightening it out a bit and then putting a bit of a bend in it, but not looking to make it a hard bend, a hard fold. So I just kind of push it down gently, use the scissors to push it down gently, but I don't want a sharp fold in it. That's what I'm trying to say. So I wanted to add a little bit of a band at the back of one. Now I could have used a piece that I'd taken out, but I didn't have enough for each of the journals. So I had this other little scrap of paper, so what I decided to do is cut it to length, just trim it again with my rotary cutter, and then I'm just going to cut it in half, and that will give me a band to go in each journal. And I'm just going to attach it at the back of the journal so I can either put in a tag or little bits of paper that I could use. Now I've decided with this that I'm actually just going to attach it with a stapler. It's a tiny attacher. I'm just going to put the open end of the staple to the inside, and then I'll just kind of push it down and make sure it's securely in place and no rough edges. In time I may go over it with a piece of washi tape or another piece of cardboard, something like that, but it felt good enough for me at that point. And again, I think that just adds a little bit of interest. And there I am, just making sure that the staples are fully down so that they're not going to catch on anything. So for my first journal, what I'm going to do is sew the pages in, but I'm just going to quickly go around it with some black StazOn ink. Now I didn't go around the individual pages, I will do those as I go along, but just inking round the outside of the cover. So for this one I'm going to use a needle, some waxed thread. I'm cutting it roughly at 3, 2.5 would be more than ample, and in fact you could probably get away with 2 lengths of it, but I just like to make sure that I've got plenty. So the good thing about the wax is it's easier to thread into needles. I just run it through my fingers, it warms the wax up a little bit, and it will just pull through the papers that little bit more easily. So just checking the papers are all in place. I'm going to put them right into the cover there. I'm going to take my awl and I'm basically going to punch all the way through. Just using the ruler to make sure the pages are pushed right down, and right in the middle I push right the way through, and I feel the awl sticking into my mat underneath. Then just go up a bit, maybe about 3/4 of an inch to an inch from the outside edge, and the same at the bottom. So then just push it in a bit further. I don't do that on my mat, otherwise I'd push virtually right through the mat. But just push through those holes so that I know that my needle will go through it quite easily. So I've got my needle, and on this occasion I am going to start on the inside. So I just go through the middle hole from the inside to the out, I catch the tail of the thread to make sure I don't pull it right the way through. I go up to the top, pull it through, back into the middle, pull it through, down to the bottom hole, and you'll see it's going through very easily here. And then all I do, check the threads are taut. Then I take the one that was in the middle there from the one that I brought up from the bottom of the book, and I just tie them together roughly in the middle of the journal. I put 3 knots in it, probably with waxed thread. 2 will do because it does grip very well. But that's that little journal ready and done. So it's ready now for using. So I'm now going to do this one in a slightly different way. Now I have done journals in a similar way to this before, and I will put some links above and below. But what I'm basically going to do with this one is just punch holes. Now this is good if you're not keen on stitching journals, stitching signatures into journals. But I'm going to do it slightly different to normal. Sometimes I've just put a hole top and bottom. But because I have some papers that are quite short this time, I've decided I'm going to put 2 holes at the top and 2 holes at the bottom. But I'm only going in as far as my hole puncher will go, and it won't reach to the middle, so it's only as far in as it will go. And what I'm showing you there is with the shorter papers, you either need to have them towards the top of the journal cover or to the bottom. So what I'm doing now is just basically going through my signature, moving the shorter pages one way or the other. Just a double check. And there was that little bit of deli paper. I needed to move that back up to the top. If I'd left them centred, then nothing was going to catch them. They wouldn't have been secured via a hole. So I'm being a little bit ambitious here. I'm going to take my punch and try and punch through them all. It was quite a thick stack, and I punch and then it sticks. I thought I'd broken the punch. I hadn't actually thought, it was just the lock was partly on. So I had to remove the papers one by one, and what you see me doing here is just lining them all up again. I want to make certain that I've got them all lined up, using the awl just to go through that hole. That just helps me line them up again. Making sure that they're all centred, putting it in there. I've got one loose paper to the side which I will go back and put in a second. But now that I've got that hole done, I do one just a little bit further up. So I've almost got the 2 holes within the space of less than an inch. And this actually ends up securing them pretty well. So put that paper back in so that it will be caught at the bottom of the journal. And I'm going to do the same thing again, 2 holes. And what you need to do here is to try and make sure that you actually centre them with the fold of the pages and the journal cover. So there you see I have the 4 holes. Now what you could do is take something like twine and then literally just thread it through, starting at the top on the inside and going through. And I do this with quite a lot of journals, but I'm not going to do that today. I'm just showing you that you don't even need a needle. But again, I'm just going to use my wax thread and a needle because I can do it that way a little bit quicker. And you know, in many ways, although it's a slightly different binding, the principle is exactly the same. I know some people have a bit of a fear of doing this, but it really is fairly straightforward. So all you want to do here is to thread your papers onto the needle, and we're just going through that top hole. Of course, some of the papers wouldn't catch in that hole, which is fine because they'll be caught further down. Then going to the next hole down, and again just making sure that I catch everything. So from there I'm going to go right down past the middle to the next hole, and do the same again. By the time I come back up the way, these papers will be fairly secure and I'll be able to go through them in a oneer. So through each of the second bottom holes, and there it is through the cover, and then through the bottom hole from the back. And then it's a case of simply running back up the way through the holes that we've already been in until the threads meet, this time near the top of the journal. Now you could do it from the outside of the journal and leave the threads hanging and put some beads on if you wanted. I just wanted to keep it quite straightforward today. So again, 3 knots just to secure it, and then I'll trim them off, and there we have a second binding. So that's my 2 mini journals made from the Masterboard, or one of the Masterboards that I made last week. So just a Masterboard and some really scrap pages, some old book pages, just material that I had sitting around. All I'm going to do now is to take another couple of little bits of paper and to tuck them behind that band at the back of the book. And I could imagine just securing a few little things in there. I might add some pockets in future. I might put a pocket at the front, put little bits and pieces in so that I could carry this journal around with me, and I have some basic supplies there to do some bits and pieces, you know. So put this in a bag, put it in your pocket with a glue stick or whatever, pencil, a couple of pens, and ready to go. And to secure it, all I'm going to do is put a bit of that twine around it, and that's it. Other ways to do it if you wanted, but I quite like the simplicity of this. So I hope you've enjoyed this project. If you're in the group, then I look forward to seeing you make some of these journals. There's a link below if you do want to join our Facebook group, and there's just a couple of very simple questions that you need to answer for your application to go through. If you don't want to join, I hope you get inspiration from this project anyway. So thanks for watching. Bye for now.